Welcome to Brand Formula, a new podcast focused on the marketing and brands at play in Formula One today. I'm your host, Mordecai, and my co-host is Alyssa Margulis. Say hi, Alyssa.
Hello.
Between us, we have 30 years of marketing experience across agencies, in-house at brands, digital platforms, content studios, and more. We're also big F1 fans. Alyssa was raised on F1 from childhood, and I am a Drive to Survive COVID convert. Each week, we will bring to you our takes on the brands around F1, the teams, and the drivers themselves. We'll analyze the advertising and marketing moves being made, the audience as it continues to evolve across markets, and look at white spaces we think need to be covered. Who is seeing an ROI, and who's DNF'd? So now let's talk the brand formulas shaping F1 today. Welcome to our second episode. Thank you for listening, and please support us by liking, subscribing, and following us. Welcome to Brand Formula. Here we are again. We're back, Alyssa.
We're back. Second week, second race. So much drama.
So much drama, and long live Peter Bonnington.
The best. The best. I think if I could rank people that I want to meet, he would be one below Lewis for sure. Just iconic and obviously the sweetest man to ever walk the earth.
I mean, as long as he wore the double denim that he wore for Lewis's last race with Mercedes, I will feel a special just bit of my heart and total fangirldom should that ever occur for us in our lives. But yes, Peter Bonnington, absolute racing engineering legend, engineer for Jenson Button, engineer for Schumacher, Hamilton, and now Grand Prix winner, Kimi Antonelli.
The eye of every teenage girl's dreams. I can confirm as the mom of a teenager, he is definitely making a whole new generation of F1 fans.
He is. And, I think the journey of male tears in F1 have been a journey of, apologist behavior. And Kimi this weekend just said, I'm going to cry. In the affirmative. No more apology with it. It was quite beautiful. Kimi Antonelli, second youngest driver to ever win a Grand Prix.
It was so special because I think in a day and age where there can be a lot of performative performance online and achieving your dreams, and especially for a younger generation that maybe doesn't feel like there's as many opportunities for them to see someone achieve their dreams at such a young age, to see the trajectory of how he got there. I think it's really inspiring beyond just the racing world. So I loved seeing it. It definitely got me. I'm not a crier, but I felt emotion in my stomach when it happened.
I am a crier, and I cried.
As you should.
Yeah, I think also I didn't realize how much tension I was holding around Lewis getting a podium. And so to see him get a podium, and yes, all of the rest of it, but it was just like a sigh of relief, like we're back. We're back on the podium.
We're so back. We're so back. It could not have been a more perfect podium, a more perfect weekend. And I think, not perfect for all of the brands involved in Formula One, which we'll talk about, but for
yes, absolutely.
a lot of fans, truly a perfect weekend.
Yes. And, we are just here to say we enjoyed ourselves. I thought, China, per usual, delivered great activations around, great vibes, lots of Chinese New Year stuff around. I saw Ted eating some buns, some steamed buns, and trying to figure out what to do with chopsticks. Obviously, there was a lot of champagne sprayed and all of that. Anything else stand out before we talk about those brands that may be making some money in a way they don't want to make it back?
I would say the only one other thing that stood out for me was Ollie Bierman's absolute lack of media training and just um, complete disregard for decorum, which I thought was really refreshing and kind of funny to see two young drivers between Kimmy and Ollie just being themselves. And
Mhm.
I kind of hope that that never changes. So it did feel a bit like a passing of the guard moment where the kind of old F1 and the perceptions around it are shifting as this new generation is becoming more and more at the forefront.
Yeah, they're an exciting generation. Obviously, we had them all come in last year, and now they're sort of a little settled. Their jobs don't feel as much, I think, on the line in the beginning of the season, and they have a year of experience under their belt. And yeah, the way they communicate with a lack of PR training or just a not care, they're very good boys.
They
And
are.
I'm going to use that term because as what Kimmy was 1 year old at Lewis's first
Yes.
win, correct?
one
Yes.
year old. And, at the same time, it was really this dichotomy between these young drivers and then seeing Lewis and Carlos and scrapping and kind of old school racing in a way where they were also kind of going against the media training and saying how much they loved that. And I just thought that it was a really nice moment for sports and for
Hmm.
being rivals and both wanting the same thing and the same team but really enjoying it and just straight up saying that was a really refreshing take from the Ferrari camp, which is, you know, tended to not necessarily be as open.
Correct. But, our podium is now complete. I have dried my tears. I am now in full affection because we're going to one of my favorite Grand Prix to watch everything, especially all the pandemonium of Japan in a week. So we'll have a week of a no Grand Prix intro to our episode, and then we'll be in Japan. And then we have an entire month, an unexpected spring break of
Yes.
F1 due to adventures. So one of the things that we saw I'm in the UK, and so I saw it on the high street, right in the center of London, popping up all around. And that was because the Uniqlo F1 Disney partnership dropped. And Uniqlo, if you're not familiar with London, it's like right in the center of a Times Square like environment, and all of the windows were taken over. And just for perspective, that's basically been like an F1 hub. Williams took over entire area around there. McLaren has a pop up. So you kind of just hit a lot of F1 in that area. But we had the drop of Uniqlo and Disney, which is part of their larger partnership that they did sort of pop up at Australia and then at China. They had teased it last year at Vegas. So the mouse is in the house. What are we thinking?
I am not a Disney, what do they call Disney adult? I'm not a Disney adult. I was not a Disney kid. I don't have that much tie to Disney. However, so that's my personal aside. I don't know that it makes sense. But I'm going to put that over there and put on my brand marketing hat. And from that perspective, it makes perfect sense. I think there is a merging of fandoms that are coming together that Disney can bring new people into F1 and F1 can bring people like me that don't really care about Disney into Disney in a different way because the merch is good. The storytelling is really good. To release a custom comic book all around F1 and it be serialized and be building throughout the season is a really smart way to merge what Disney is about with what F1 is about. So I give them kudos on their brand formula in terms of how the partnership is coming to life. I also think we're a bit critical last week around F1 and Apple not bringing that partnership to life to the community and activating at races. Disney is a really good example where they're going community first and they're being able to bridge the hundreds of thousands of people coming to a race with the people that are not able to go, but still experience it with merch and storytelling and content and creative. So I'm here for it. I'm probably not going to put mouse ears on anytime soon, but we'll see.
I think it's also, one of the I'm not a huge fan of the partnership. I'm also we're both not Disney adults, nor was I a Disney child. But I think what's exciting to me is the price point shift of F1 merch that this provides. F1 merch, I have my eye on a Reese McLaren black jumper that's 200 pounds, um, which is very nice and lovely. But that, when you go to a Grand Prix, when you're buying something online, Lewis's stuff is a bit normal, but you're really spending a lot of money for a t-shirt or a hat that's official. So
Yeah.
the fact that you have these opportunities of all of this product, particularly at Uniqlo prices, just the similar to all of their licensing deals that they've done, it's just much more accessible. Otherwise you're on like a Temu trying to get something, or Ferrari with only two R's and that kind of thing you end up with. I did see an amazing Smooth Operator shirt that you may catch on our podcast in the future, but that kind of thing. But overall, this is a deal that it's multi-year, kicked off at the Vegas GP as mentioned. It has the Webtoons content series that we just talked about, the branded products. They have a partnership with Miniso as well, very similar, more takeaway of like a cuddly thing. And I actually stumbled upon the Q drop for that a little bit ago, the first F1 partnership in that. So they have that. And then they have the Gentle Monster collab actually falls
Yeah.
under this, which I will say is my favorite of the collabs that they have. Those glasses are, it's Gentle Monster. You'd expect nothing less, but they're fantastic. They have wing glasses. They have different versions of sort of wraparounds and that space in different car colors. And I thought that was beautiful. But other than that, we have social amplification and then lots of local activations. So that is what they really focused on as they continue to go. So for me, my criticism, and this is going to be a marketer to marketer dialogue that you all get to be privy to, is it feels to me, what there's a TikTok that we may try to link in the bio by The Real O Show, which came out mid 2025 when this partnership was sort of announced that this was happening. And they said, how exciting, imagine what, take the F1 Kids broadcast and put cars in it, the animated film and have those kinds of personalities that they have the IP of in. And what will ESPN do if they were able to take over for the broadcast? F1 and Disney Plus, how exciting for all of that content. And so my point here being is that that stuff is not possible
Nope.
because other deals. And so though the alignment of the two communities is exciting, one of my negatives of this is it feels like scraps. It feels like Disney was like, we got to get in there. We can't not be there. But, the F1 Kids, the Sky Kids that we have here, I don't know how they translate on Apple TV now, but it's a fantastic broadcast. Those kids are amazing commentators, but also the way they animate all of the drivers. And the fact that Disney isn't doing that right now is very weird to me. It just is such a open space, but then you understand because it's an Apple TV thing and so on. I don't know all if that will change, but to me, that's how it feels. It feels like, okay, the only areas of non-exclusivity that we could get are here, and we're going to make the most of them, but you're still taking scraps.
Yeah, that's why the world of F1 is so fascinating because it's really not cut and dry. But I kind of think any major tentpole moment, even the Oscars is a great example. It was last night. When you think about the brands that are around and in the Oscars, there's a lot of guardrails that they have to adhere to depending on whether they're an official partner. Are they a partner of the Vanity Fair party, or are they a partner on the red carpet? Are they part of E? So you do have to create lanes, and having had experience with a lot of tentpole programming, in a way, I like that you have to get more creative. I do think that weirdly, if Disney could build the world in totality because they could be the streamer and they could own broadcast, that it would take away some of the creativity that they've had to bring to the partnership. So I kind of, in a way, commend them for the way that they're going. I'm happy for that side of it.
Yeah. I mean, my second more controversial opinion on this partnership only comes from a long period of supporting women's sports and women's sports fandoms. I'm an original season ticket holder for the WNBA in New York. I love to support women's sports. And what often happens when female fandoms come into sport is that it becomes about the kids. And it really disappoints me that the way we communicate to women is through motherhood, is through their children. And as we will talk about, we'll have a female fandom episode coming up during our unintended spring break of time. But it just makes me disappointed. So it's not a major criticism to them. It's a typical playbook that people would say, oh, we have an increase in female fans. Out of every 4 fans right now, 3 of them are female. So let's go cater to childlike things and kids that will help our female audience. And, the female audience, which again, we won't fully break down, but is young. They're not mothers yet. They're not acting like children. They're young people excited about a strategy first sport. And so that just disappoints me as a critical take, but they're going to do what they're going to do. And it's Disney. You can't not be who you are.
Yeah, I would say, and maybe because I'm not a huge Disney fan, so I've not seen, it doesn't get served to me in a natural way. I have to go seek it out for research for us doing this, but it does feel a bit Gen Z focused. I could be wrong, but Gentle Monster, more Gen Z. Uniqlo, yes, a huge crossover in terms of generation. But I feel like what they're doing is they are trying to capture that entry point. But to your point, that is a pipeline to what Disney actually is, which is obviously getting people to spend a ton of money within the Disney ecosystem, to go to parks, to go to movies, to be a part of the consumerism that Disney has created. So there's definitely an aspect for that. I guess maybe I'm a bit jaded. I'm like, of course they are. Of course. What else would they be doing?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, one thing I'd like to see from Disney, because we do encourage marketers to listen to us. By the way, we don't think they actually listened, but the Meta AI logo did change location.
We did that. We
It
did
turned
that.
180 degrees for the better. So we did do that. But also for Disney, if they brought in the magic bands, as they fuel the magic. So again, we're both not experienced in this, but the magic bands is kind of like a high octane version of going to the Eras tour, where your wristband connects you with all of the rides and all of the experience. And I do think it would be really fun to see that technology really come in. And I think they did it a little bit in Vegas. I just have a hunch that they did, but I would love to see, instead of, how many times do I see a driver not have their laminate on and that kind of thing, and to see that evolve overall, I think could be interesting if they brought some of the technology that they use in their experiences into the paddock as they increase their experiential across the races. I'd like to see that. More data.
Love that idea.
All right. So this is what we want to see from Disney as they get seen more and more around the paddock. But the second subject that we wanted to cover today was really about the change and what being on the Grand Prix circuit looks like. And what we're going to start talking about is there is no more turtle this year because Aston Martin is no longer the safety health vehicle. And Max Verstappen famously referred to that safety car as the turtle. And it was a 5-year partnership. And this was a decision I know made because of a lot of financial changes that Aston has to make. And this is an interesting place. Mercedes took that over, and that's a little bit of brand perception. But this is a major area that these teams have an opportunity to get a little bit more attention. And, it's a vulnerable play for all of these OEMs to jump into another place. But a lot's changing in that. So, let's talk about it. Let's talk about what's driving F1 right now.
I thought it was really interesting to see how Cadillac has come into F1 and how they used China as a bridge between consumer product and F1 fandom from the team. So they actually launched a new car in China at the Grand Prix. And this is fascinating to me because obviously there's a lot of political conversations between China, the US, cars, the need for American manufacturing. And so to have an American car team launch a new car in China in a global sport was really, really interesting and leads me to believe that Cadillac is pushing into Formula One, not just to show their power literally from a powertrain perspective, but to build new consumer audiences for their cars globally. It's been such a car that is associated with the US. So I thought that this was kind of a new phase, really, for them to market. And really interesting because Formula One is so global. It's so driven by social, pun intended, that
Mhm.
even though they were launching this car in China, there is a massive earned media ecosystem that's happening by all of the fandom and all of what is being talked about in an international Grand Prix through a global lens. So I just think that Cadillac is, because they're new, they get
Mhm.
to choose a different marketing perspective. And they also unveiled an entire global campaign with Jim Beam, which is the official spirits partner of the Cadillac Formula One team. And I have to laugh because anytime an alcohol brand partners with an auto brand, I am just fascinated because just feels like maybe the two most incongruous partners coming together. But they launched an entire campaign, huge, beautiful campaign celebrating this heritage of both of these brands. So I do think I'm personally looking at it and how Cadillac is towing the line between American heritage, American branding, and global influence.
Absolutely. And the fact that they did this in China is such a big statement to their interest in being a global power in the auto market, which they are. But again, large American brand, but in that space because, one, it was an experience. You had to see the car, you had to be there. It's just like any auto show, it's a personal experience that you would be having. But China is not a race that is on a decent hour for anyone, pretty much. From me over here in Europe to you over in North America, it's not convenient for anyone. So you're not playing towards that audience in anything more than a press release and some social clips that's going to come out. And that's a huge statement to make. I'd be curious, and this is just having been in auto marketing for an OEM. China is such a center point of electric vehicle product elements of it. I don't know how much of Cadillac is getting from China, but I'd also be curious around that side of things in particular, just and not in the F1 space, in the everyday vehicles that you're looking at. So much comes out of there. I'd be curious to see what that breaks down to. But it's definitely interesting watching Cadillac make their mark. I think they're making incredibly smart decisions and leveraging this partnership in a very deliberate, specific way, which is no surprise due to their leadership. But everything from the drivers that they picked to the way that they're, coming at the conversation and embracing, though they are, really at the front of the US side, and Ford is a part of it too, in other aspects of the F1 system. But what we have here is also just a brand saying, no, we're part of the global stage. And that's just so important. And I think that was one of the nice things that translated in China as well, is that, we're not going to get into politics today, but the politics were not there. It was a great race. That's what it was. And it was a great day
Yeah.
for Italy, all of those things. It was a great day for Cadillac in America and F1, for Disney, which is also an American brand, but a global brand. And to really understand as brands that your formula, to enjoy the name of our podcast, is to make sure that it's global. You used to always struggle if you do global activations, it's a bunch of people have a different button they're going to push. But with F1, you get one button for the entire globe. And that's just such a game changer for marketeers at that level. You don't have to translate it into territories as much.
100%. And now Cadillac just needs their Formula One cars to maybe get from the back of the pack a little bit closer to the middle. And we'll see what their sales numbers are on the consumer side.
We shall see. But, they aren't they? They definitely did in some session. And this is why, we're not going to listen to other podcasts for all the technical perfection.
That's
But
not us.
that's not us. But I do know that it happened at some point that they did beat Aston Martin. And
Well, it's not
Aston
saying that
Martin,
much, but yes.
it isn't. And so, we're talking about the impact of having a brand more and more on the grid. So, as you see it there, but we also had two major examples, and Aston Martin is one of them, being, not performing at a good level at all. And then we also have two DNSs. So, two do not starts for those of you that are not in the Formula One game for McLaren. So, last year's Constructors' Championship, the Drivers' Champion last year did not participate in the Grand Prix because their car had power unit issues. But this affects brands. This affects the
Huge.
sponsorship at play.
And when you pay $100 million to be the title sponsor for a team, and there are even less races this year, as we have two races that aren't even happening, your return on that investment and the way that you're measuring that comes down to each weekend and each amount of airtime that those cars are getting, the earned media around that team. So when you are the MasterCard McLaren team, and you are MasterCard and you don't have a single car that is on that grid, you don't have commentators talking about the team, you don't see those cars driving by with your logo, that money is gone. What I thought was interesting, though, is that it was a huge conversation of the weekend because they won so much last year. So if I'm thinking about it from a data ROI marketing perspective, while the cars weren't on the grid and they didn't start, the story was so big that there is this earned media around these brands that are sponsoring and partnering with McLaren. You could argue it's not a good story, but that's not about your brand. It's, interestingly, it's a Mercedes power unit issue inside of McLaren, and Mercedes was 1-2 in the race. So it's not
Again.
also,
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
you know, I can't be necessarily negative on them because it's obviously something that McLaren got wrong. But I was thinking about, if I was the marketing director at MasterCard, how am I thinking about proving this investment out? And am I planning ahead? Are there a lot of conversations that are happening with these title partners before race seasons around the balance of where their return comes from, whether the cars are on the grid, whether they're not, what's happening around it? How much extra do you need to pour in to making that a successful partnership if the team is not performing in the way that you would want them to that year?
Yeah. And the bottom line is, with an issue like Aston Martin, this is a big issue for them. So they're going to go lower in the constructors, which is losing like 10 million a tier on that in terms of the investment and so on. But when you get in, like, this was a bit of a fluke. It wasn't intended. They usually they get better as they go. McLaren is known for that of late, that they will learn from mistakes if they make them. But what really comes down is, so if you are MasterCard and they have a wonderful marketing team who we love, but you are getting to the point. So like you said, it's around $100 million investment. That's about 4 million a race. If you had 24 this year, we now have 22 as of this weekend. So now you're at 4.5 million, plus you're flying in VIPs for hospitality and so on. So it's a simple question: what's our make good for our lost exposure value? But and this is just because we've all been in the mix, that is going to fall on two people. Maybe 3 in the case of McLaren because they have some personality in their CEO of Zach, but it's gonna fall on the drivers, and it's gonna be more media days, more partnership marketing, more shooting for socials, all of that marketing stuff, and, though not them, in a driver's press conference, I think for Australia, Kimmy was saying to Lewis, like, they have me on a lot of marketing days. A driver like Lewis, that's one of the key reasons. Like when he negotiated Ferrari, they talked about the fact that he wanted less media days. Mercedes was giving him too many. So this is a very frequent conversation in contract negotiations for F1 drivers and just their general vibe. Like
Yeah.
they don't want to be involved in it. And now that is who it is going to fall on. So these make goods will be falling onto the driver's time, which frustrates them as well. And then you get some irritated, very good drivers as well. Probably mostly Lando, AKA the driver's champion last year, is now going to have to meet and greet a lot more people.
And it brings up an interesting point because the McLaren drivers are obviously they were at the top of the game, top of the podiums, the biggest story last year. And so you're getting a lot more extra earned oomph, to use a technical term, because of that. Whereas this year, you're not seeing that necessarily. And on the flip side, they're not going to want to do more because they already make more money. They already are committed. They have their own brands. They have their own deals. So there's less of their time to go around. Whereas you see a more junior team like Visa Cash App, who's built an entire social storytelling strategy around their drivers because they do have so much more access to them. So they're able to build a marketing world easier because of that. And so I'm super, super curious how all of these brands kind of ride in the same space, but choose different lanes to go down.
Yeah, it's definitely, curious. I mean, this MasterCard deal is into the 2030s. Like, this isn't going anywhere or anything like that. This is a long game, not a short game, which is why, it may sound so minor, these sort of make goods, and the value of it. But, it is a bigger problem for an Aston Martin because they are not, they're basically still in testing. So, Aston Martin's car is not drivable pretty much for an entire Grand Prix. I mean, Alonso at one point had to literally let go
Hands
of
off.
hands off the steering wheel, for lack of a better term for everyone, to not touch it because the vibrations are so bad that he's going to have long-term damage. And
Yeah.
that's how bad the car is right now. And that is an issue where we're not seeing it. And even if you see it, it's all apologies. And your point of what McLaren gets to do is, they do say all news is good news. It's good to be in the conversation. And they're doing a great job of taking accountability. Andrea Stella was, on the mic saying we have to do these make goods, not going into the nitty gritty that we are on the podcast, but acknowledging the fact that they have commercial priorities that they need to make good on in that way. But Aston has the bigger issue where they're going down in the constructors and they are going to probably have to do some paybacks because of the high level of low performance at this point, with really doesn't look like a turnaround coming anytime soon.
No, no. And I would say from a MasterCard McLaren perspective versus Aston Martin as its own brand name, I question again that consumer crossover to people wanting to buy Aston Martins. MasterCard has such a massive marketing engine. Formula One is one part of it, whereas Aston Martin as its own brand, take away all the brand partners that are a part of that team that lost out. Aston Martin as its own brand is losing in showing that they're not able to build a viable car. So it's an interesting space to be in when McLaren is not trying to sell consumer cars. Those are supercars. There is not everyone's going to go get them, and Aston Martin is a little bit more trying to cross over.
Yeah, and their partnerships in this regard for their build is causing them issues in that, and that will be a very curious look for Japan because they are working with Honda, and that's Honda's race. So we shall see how Aston navigates being in the spotlight because they won't be able to hide in that, and it will have to turn into an affirmative. This is crisis comms in marketing at its finest, coming ahead to us at one of the best Grand Prix, in my opinion. Hopefully, we also get a little bit of cherry blossom season and all of that goodness when we are in Japan. But that will be in 2 episodes from now. So thank you for joining us. We hope you saw a return in your time and investment, learning more about F1 with us, learning about marketing, or both. Please be kind to us as we're continuing to hammer out our technicals here and figure out our format for our podcast. But we really hope that all of you got to take away something, got your own ROI from today. Now, we've got a week off, so we'll have something special planned for you for episode 3. And we are en route to Japan, and that will be an exciting time for us. Anything you're particularly looking forward to?
Oh, I mean, that's the race that I want to go to the most. So for me personally, and I guess this is going to be my theme, I'm really, really interested to see what the on the ground, more community fan marketing is looking like across these different brand partnerships and teams. So that's one thing that I'm definitely holding out for. And also, Japan without Yuki. Sorry.
Yuki's there. Yuki's a reserve driver.
I know.
He's there and he will be there. And he is also, and we will discuss this in our driver brands episode, he is putting out the thirst traps. If you haven't seen it on his social, you don't know what a rebrand is doing. So the new Yuki will be in
Ready to
Japan,
go.
ready to go, and ever so available. So as we say goodbye, I think the lesson here always is you can't just show up. You got to communicate, even if it's crisis comms, McLaren, good on you, do it. Because marketing, it isn't about whose voice is the loudest. It's the voice that you'll remember. So we look forward to continuing to talk to you about marketing and F1 and all that's in between. Please like, subscribe, do all the following things. We're trying to do this organic build with all of you. And so we hope you'll work with us for that. Your support would mean the world. So goodbye for now and lights out.
Lights out.